Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah, just keep that one down towards the speaker. All right, so we are reconvening our public improvement hearing for Old Viking Boulevard. Thank you for your attendance tonight. It's Thursday, March 5th, April 5th, 2018. And we want to make sure that those people that weren't able to come to our previous meeting on the public improvement were able to come and weigh in if they so desired. We do ask that people step up to the podium, give their name and address, and then share with us your desires regarding the road improvement. Should you be here tonight to do that?
My name is Larry Skolquist. I live at 6840 213th Avenue Northwest, and I own the property on Cleary Road and Old Viking, the northwest corner. I guess my question is, on the larger acreages, what's the plan?
The initial plan right now is that there's going to be one assessment per PIN number.
Okay?
There was some discussion on if we needed to, for lots that may, for large parcels that may be developing, have some type of reserve. So if they developed in the immediate future, there would be some recompense for, if we had 8 lots going out onto Old Viking, that we'd have to figure out something there. But right now, the assessment estimate is on one lot, or one assessment per PIN number.
In some cities, they consider ag land as exempt unless it's developed in the near future. Is that in any thoughts on that?
I don't recall actually exempting for ag land. I do know there was discussion on larger parcels that may be developed, but not exempting them until they develop. So that didn't, at least my recollection, it hasn't come up from our engineers.
The green acres would apply,
The green acres do apply,
right?
yes.
So that would
So it defers it
defer it.
to development or sale.
Some cities, they'll, if it's ag land with buildings, they'll get one assessment on the buildings and then no assessment on the vacant land if it's ag land. I just wanted to bring that up, see if there was any consideration.
Well, we certainly will note it. Once we get the final numbers back, we'll have there will be another hearing on this, so we'll have that discussion with the engineer, see what he's done in other cities.
All right, thank you.
So you said there was one assessment with land with the buildings?
Pardon me?
You were saying there was an assessment with land with buildings?
Yeah, if they have buildings on, they got one assessment.
And then
The vacant.
vacant is deferred?
Yep. Is exempt unless it gets developed in the near future, 5 years from now.
Oh,
Hi, Shelby Marr, 5320 Old Viking Boulevard. So I was reading over the proposal and everything like that. 2015, it said the rating fell to a 53. Why wasn't anything done in 2015 for the road?
the reason we developed a 5-year plan is to try and figure out how to afford to pay for these things. The roads that we've been addressing up till now with the budgeted levy money have been the worst-case scenarios. So actually, it was deferred for other roads that were in worse shape.
Okay.
The other question was what the state was going to do with state aid money, because that would be a state aid road. And so there could be more repair done if it were state aid qualified. Well, we don't qualify for state aid until we become a city of 5,000, so we still have 500 some to go. But in the last couple of legislative sessions, they have started granting money to small cities that don't qualify for state aid. And so we were looking at that. The last year, they weren't able to get anything done, so some of the monies we were hoping to come through didn't come through.
Okay.
And so the monies we do have that we have been setting aside in the levy account have been for roads that are in the worst shape. And in our development of the 5-year plan, we came back and said, let's take a look at the roads that aren't fully gone yet and try and keep them from going rather than waiting till they need total repair. And that's where Old Viking came in. It's not far enough gone that needs total repair. It can still be salvaged. And so that's why it moved to the top of the list.
Okay. And then in the 3 years now it's been, or 2 years since it's been assessed, do you know what the current rating of the road is?
I do not have the current road plan with me. Dan, do you have any idea what that?
I don't think we got updated numbers from when Shane looked at the roads, our engineer went through and redid all the roads. I don't think he scored them,
Okay.
but he just came back with, these are the top list of roads that should be looked at.
Okay. And then how many are you guys planning to do this next year? Road upgrades, we'll call them.
There's 2 improvement projects that are proposed right now.
Okay.
And we had one hearing before the Old Viking hearing that same night.
Mhm.
And that was for Pinnaker Lake Estates area. And then Old Viking.
Okay.
And then the road and bridge will be evaluating, again, when they get the information from the engineering firm. They have a 5-year plan in place right now. With these 2 potentially coming off the plan, if we move ahead with these, then they will come back and say, what are the next 5 years looking like? So they've got the next 4 years right now. Do they want to keep with that schedule, or does something else become more urgent?
All right.
And that is published, that is available through the cities.
Okay. And then when you go to bid, are you gonna bid the 2 roads together to get like a bundle discount maybe?
That's one of the reasons we wanted to do them together, is to get the discount.
Okay. And then what's gonna happen for maintenance of the road? Because it's supposed to be a 10-year fix. If nothing is kept up on it, what is the maintenance gonna contain?
The maintenance at this point will be, every other year, there will be crack sealing.
Okay.
So right now, we do crack sealing in the southern half of the city one year and the northern half the opposite year. And so there should be crack sealing at least every other year, and then repairs as needed. If a pothole were to develop somewhere, or a shoulder break or something like that, there would be regular maintenance as part of our bituminous plan. And we have budgeted money for that, for general repairs like that. We just haven't ever budgeted this much money to cover a complete overlay. But there will be continuous crack seal, observation and crack seal.
Is the money, so it's a 50-50 split, the city is gonna pay for half of it, and then potentially we, on Old Viking, will pay for the other half. And when we pay in taxes, what percentage of our taxes goes into a road account?
Yeah, on a regular levy,
Yeah,
I don't know if we figured out percentage-wise. Dan, you might be able to know from, Dan can do some math for you quick. Our levy is 1.7, I believe.
Approved budget was, unless Corey gets it faster.
She's not looking.
She's not looking. That's fine. The total proposed for, wait, that's expenses.
And your question was how much for the road improvement is coming out of the budget?
yeah, or is how much is coming out of our taxes that we pay to the city. Our own taxes.
Assessment. this year, we're transferring 200,000 from the budget into the road improvement fund. And with the operating expenses of about, 1.6, so that's about an eighth, so that's about 12% of the budget or so.
I don't know if this is possible, but is there a way, to set in a standard on everybody's, like, property taxes to say, all right, $50 every year is gonna go to, like, roads, or levies, or whatever?
Some of those options were talked about. Some cities use a fee, a utilities fee for that. There's some that do a portion. Right now, some people live on county roads, some people live on gravel roads, some people live on city blacktop roads. And so what we're doing by levying for that 50% of these projects, that 50% is being levied citywide. That's part of everybody's taxes. So that already is being distributed with the understanding that at some point, people other than the residents who live on a road are gonna drive on the road. So similarly, where we levy for gravel road and regular blacktop road upkeep, it gets dispersed amongst everybody. This $200,000 that we put in the budget this year for the road improvement fund would be levied to all Nowland taxpayers. So
Okay.
that is already being distributed amongst those.
Okay, I just wasn't sure how that was working. And then one last
And,
note.
and for the rest of the council, if I'm misstating or not stating it clearly, feel free to jump in, so. I'm sorry,
Oh, you're fine. Just one last note. With the threshing show that takes place on this road, are they gonna get a higher percentage since there's thousands of people that come to it and big machinery, old tractors, a little bit more of a heavier use?
at this point, they have multiple parcels. To my knowledge, there was general discussion on usage and would that allow for a difference in assessment? Because this is something that we're doing for the first time as a city. We did not reach out to, say, ag land or larger parcels or usage. Whether somebody has a business on that road versus the threshing show having a business on there. That I anticipated would come up in our previous discussion. You're the first one to actually bring it up that I know of. It's been part of our discussion. At this point, we are doing, our proposal going in is one assessment per PIN number.
Okay.
So if they got multiple PIN numbers, they would have multiple assessments, but we are not rating the traffic that goes in and out of there at this point. Whether it's coming down Jasper, whether it's coming in from 5 or coming in from 47. Would take a different traffic study. And so we don't have that. We have presumed knowledge, we don't have any traffic study on it to know how we would leverage that. So,
Okay. Well, thank you.
you're welcome, thank you.
Good question.
Somebody came prepared. Mr. Skolquist.
Is the Pinnaker Lake project under the same, where the city's paying half and the residents paying the other half?
Correct.
So when this happens to other streets and now that this is gonna be the same scenario too, or are we gonna get to the point where we're starting to budget more money for that so nobody gets assessed?
We don't really know. When we talk to the engineer and the attorney who have done this before, they're saying there isn't a guarantee that it's always gonna be the same. It depends on the individual projects and the feasibility of those projects. We started with 50%. Previously, when the township did this, they went 100%. So the property owners paid 100%. We thought that it would make more sense at this point, starting something like this, to try with a 50%. But he said, we're not locked into that. We have not established a policy that's always going to be 50%. It could be more, it could be less, depending on the feasibility study that's done on the particular project.
I wonder how many of these people that got assessed the first time realize that when it gets done again, they're gonna get assessed again. I think it's gonna be at least.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons that we wanted to put something in there that, while we expect this to be a minimum of 10-year, as the engineer said, this could be properly maintained 15, even 20 years. But those that wanted to do less, yeah, the next assessment could also be assessing the same property owners. The anticipation is this is not gonna be done for quite some time, though. I mean, I wouldn't expect a rotation, I wouldn't expect any time before 10 years. But it certainly could be longer than that. But yes, that's one of the council members has brought up, I believe he said he's been assessed 3 times on his road, at least twice I know of, and possibly 3 times.
So I hope there's an incentive for the board to get, do some developing here to get the population up to 5,000 so we can get some state aid like the other cities get.
Yeah, we, in the interim, we're encouraging our legislators to make sure that they do provide aid to small cities, so we do have some compensation there as well. And certainly within the city, as we tell most of the developers, it really is up to the individual landowners. We're gonna do what we can, we've got a planner here to work with people. But when, yeah, I've been asked many times why we're letting large parcels break into large parcels. We had 80 acres up north that 2 people wanted to buy. We had 92 acres over on, between Bass and Pickerel that two people wanted to buy. We were working with a developer that wanted to put homes in there, but the property owner sold to 2 private parties instead. So we don't control that portion of it. If a private party wants to sell to 2, I know that there was a developer interested in making 14 lots there, but that's out of the city's control there. So.
The problem with the developers on buying the land out here is you have to have 5 acres per lot. And they put the numbers together and they can't get a profitability on the other end.
That has been brought to our attention.
And if these 5 and 10s that were out there now, had they been 2.5 or 5, you'd have your 5,000 population.
And certainly that's something that, as we have our comp plan workshops, it's something that can be discussed. So far, the people that are speaking up have the 5 acres and they want to keep it. Now, when they want to retire,
Like me,
you know, there's a number of farmers that have large lots that would like to see the density increase.
from outside looking in, it's just the numbers do not work on 5 acre density. You've got to cut that out.
Yeah, it's been suggested
You
by,
can't get this. Bringing in enough revenue to take care of the streets, all that stuff, as far as I'm concerned.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
I would just state that if, by increasing the number of households, you say that that'll help maintain the roads.
Well, you need a population of 5,000 to get some help from the state.
Right, but then you're bringing in how many more cars associated? You're looking at 250
Yeah, but
homes.
it's not just helping the city, it's helping the county and it's helping the schools.
Yeah, that's true. But the larger your population, the more wear and tear there is on your facilities and your
So
infrastructure.
what you're saying
And
is
so-
people should just have more kids.
Well, eventually they're gonna drive too. So,
But the roads will be safe until they're
yeah,
teenagers.
yeah. I mean,
Help pay taxes.
yeah. And as the mayor said, more often than not, we hear, stay with the bigger lots.
Anybody else on the Old Viking Road improvement hearing?
Charlie Zayat, 6225 Old Viking. So I wanted to kind of expound on the assessment part of it, is that, I think most of it was cleared up. My question was, it was 50/50, but we're also putting into the levy, so that means we're paying more than 50%. But if it's spread out through the whole city and everybody else has to pay it down the road, sometimes it'll all come to a wash. So,
And that's why we wanted to publish the 5-year
yeah,
plan, because while you're feeling it this year, other people will be.
right, exactly, yeah, all right. And then the property on the maps that don't have a number, are those not being, they don't have a PIN number?
Corey and I were talking about that before the meeting. It was brought to our attention. There's a couple of them that, on this map, do not have a number.
Right.
And so we're gonna check that with the engineer. Certainly, I can see one there, that appears it should be. There's a building there and it faces on Old Viking.
Right.
And I don't see on the map here. The adjoining property behind it appears to have a flag lot.
Right.
And if that accesses, should also be. So we have to check with the engineer why that isn't on our map.
Okay,
And that's, again, that's when, our final numbers will be when we determine the exact breakup of, you know, how the assessments are gonna lie, and then make sure we have all the homes properly identified.
and then my next one is the speed limits. What is the council's opinion, what's the name of that road? What is it? Is it a local road, is it a state highway, what is it?
My understanding is that has become a local road. It's turned back from the county
All right,
road to.
so then I'd like to pass these out to you guys, if you don't mind. This is what it tells what we can do to a local road, without having any petitions, all we have to do is just go through you guys, just change, speed limits.
Can I ask you to put one in the back?
Yeah, I
so it's
will,
available
yeah.
to the public? Thank
Yeah.
you.
You guys.
We have one more, too, Charlie?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Because if you remember at our last meeting, I brought it up and you had said that we had to petition the state. And so I okay, we could do that, but then I just went on the interweb and looked up speed limits in Minnesota, and it basically said that since this is a local road, that it's in our power to do it ourselves.
Okay, that's new.
So what we'll have to get as clarification is we can determine advisory speeds, the difference between an advisory speed and a posted speed limit by MinDOT. Advisory speeds are advisory only. And my understanding, and,
This is a pretty short thing, if you go on
Yep.
their site.
well, definitely, because
It
if
gets-
we can do
it's
it
in-
ourselves,
Yes, it gets into pretty depth, and it was just like, we don't need to ask anybody except us need to ask you, that's it.
no, I appreciate that. I appreciate that feedback, because,
And if you come back and say, well, we really want you to get a petition, then let us know, and we'll be more than happy to.
oh, we'll march it around ourselves.
All right.
If we can do that, and again, the majority of people that were at the last
Yes.
meeting were
We're
in
all
favor
for
of
it.
that. I don't recall anybody getting up and saying, no, don't do that.
Just one guy did, who lives on that corner of 47, yeah.
So, thank you, and we will
All right.
pursue this.
That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? And again, if you have additional things that you think of after tonight, if you're watching this online, you haven't been able to get to a meeting, the council members' contact information are available through the city offices. So you can contact any and all of us to give further opinions or put it in writing and give us detailed opinions. We haven't finalized anything yet, but at our meeting on Tuesday, we will be addressing whether we want to proceed with getting the additional information so we know actual cost. So, and those that thought maybe this was a voting meeting tonight, this is simply a workshop. We continued the last meeting to make sure everybody who wanted to was properly notified and got a chance to speak. So. Anybody else on the road improvement? All right, and I will close the road improvement hearing. And we'll move on to our regular workshop. I apologize for pounding that right in the microphone. Michael is going to present our audit.
You like the short version or the long version?
The important information.
It's so good that I could definitely easily do the short version. You guys did a fabulous job of budgeting. I do about 8 other cities, and this one is the easiest. because you understand your budget. And as you know, the budget is the governing financial document of the city. In the front of this report, everybody got one?
Yep.
Okay. You've got, other than my opinion letter, which says fine, you have this management discussion and analysis, and that goes for about 7 pages. We might as well look at the actual number one, just so we can see. All that management discussion and analysis stuff is made for the underwriters. They wanna see that, they don't understand financial statements, they wanna see pies and things like that. But Eilers and Springstead, oh, they love those. As a matter of fact, Springstead, in the bond offering, took the entire Aspen city report, with my name on it, and put it right in the bond offering. It's just perfect for what the underwriters want to see. But on page one, you can take a look at that, the business balance sheet. So if you were a business, that's what, your balance sheet would look like. All kinds of things on there, all kinds of things. And page 2 is, somebody created, that's a good looking financial statement. Debbie, you probably want one of these, don't you? It looks to me like it's a combination of government
On the back.
and business. I would like to go right to the stuff that
Michael,
we do the best.
Mike, do you have one of these at the desk back there too?
What's that?
There was one back there.
Was there?
Yes, there's one.
Okay.
There's one.
Thanks, Mike, sorry. All right,
You want me to stand in a certain place?
nope,
Right there.
Right.
we just had to make sure that the public had access to this, so if you have one in the back, we're good.
Right. Page 3 is something that you're familiar with, governmental law. And that's all we'll talk about. As you see, there's a familiar fund, doesn't have any of the little ones in it. To the right where it says capital and debt service, non-major funds. Way in the back of the report, we have all those debt service funds and little capital funds that we have. By definition, the accounting practices says you only put major funds up in the front. And our only major funds, which park acquisition, the general, and the road and bridge improvement. Everything else is, because they consist of, if you take a look at the totals, they consist of basically 75% of all the assets. There's nothing magical about the equity and the cash pool. The grand total on the right is $2,136,357. You'll find that on Corey's cash summary for December 31st, 27. Exactly. And if I didn't agree with something, she will change it, or I will change it. But it's not like we have anything different, other than as you get into all those other assets and liabilities, that we are required to do an accrual basis governmental accounting thing. And it's accounts receivable, taxes receivable, accounts payable down the wall. None of that do we have on our books. We're only interested in cash. On page 5 will be a profit and loss having to do with governmental funds. And it looks like everything's pretty much fine there. You can see the transfers that actually occurred. If anybody's got any questions on that, it should be just as you guys drew it out. No changes. To me, now we're finally getting to the most important page of all, page 8. Actually, page 7 is the beginning of it. This is the general fund. And I can't find anything that didn't pretty much flow with the budget, other than county recycling. Now, the problem with that was you got a big grant for the building, to expand your recycling building. So that particular revenue will be $130,000, it's almost like $70,000 higher than we budgeted. But if you go down below on the expenditures on page 8, you will also see the $100,498 in capital expenditure, capital outlay, and that's, it contains that recycling building. So that inflates both of the numbers a bit. Otherwise, you're right on line with the budget all the way through. I don't see anything until on page 8, you have the building inspector situation. I know what happened there, and it got a little expensive. And also, we're spending a little bit more on P&Z. But beyond that, you stayed right within the budget and did a great job. The only other thing I bring up, if you can turn to page 15, all the property, that's the thing that I handed out to you. So if you would find the totals on your colored chart property things, they're summarized here. On page 16, this is something that Councilperson Rainville is interested in. Halfway down, 2009, bonds basalt. Principal left over to pay, interest $27,000. Now we'll go back to the very back of the report, because the rest of the footnotes are rather boring. Good reading on it's rainy and ugly outside. But if you take a look at page 26, we can find in the very left-hand column the assets that the basalt fund has. It still has the green acres of 10,000, and I don't know, we never know when that might be collected. You have $4,800 worth of assessments that will be collected probably over the next 2 years, right, Corey? 2 more years left on that, plus a little bit of interest. Now, what's not in here, and what I've seen in the future, is that you have a $9,000 levy, and it looks like it'll be pretty close to bringing it, the funds very close to getting rid of the last debt that's associated with it. You know, that might be another small transfer at the end. But as you can see on page 24, 26 and 27, those are your debt service funds, and they're all very healthy looking. And they're just the way they're supposed to be. The salt is the only one that turned out to be odd. And part of it is because of that green acres. Is there anything else that anybody wants to sit down and go through the whole report? But that's all I got. Other than the property and equipment schedules that I gave you, take a look at those, and anything else you want me to do on the capital budget, let me know. Or is there any other projects that every city, every year, I do a project for no charge that has something to do with, more to do with planning and things like this, not non-audit type of thing. It's more fun to be doing that anyway than auditing, right? Serves a purpose. So let me know if there's anything that you want to create. We've got the property records. We've got a capital budget. You're the only city I've got that's got a capital budget. How about that? And they all yell at us and say you should have a capital budget, really. So you can be proud of that. And you can be proud of this report, because it's the best of the 8 cities I do, this is the best of them all, the most accurate. Is there any other projects that, perhaps, on your road project, that could do things like calculate the increase in taxes that might occur for a level of 3 different houses? I think there's three or four brackets of houses, and the tax rates are a little bit different. So for, let's say, an increase of taxes of 250,000 in your levy, I can calculate exactly the effect it would have on those houses, what the increase would be.
So if we were to decrease our levy, you could do the same thing?
If what?
If we were to decrease our levy, you could work it backwards?
I'm not so sure. I'm not so
How
sure.
much tax savings would there be?
Yeah, I'm not so sure.
I have a question.
Nobody ever does that, huh?
If we were to do, you were listening tonight with the road improvement project, and there was some questions about Green Acres and deferred and stuff. Are we gonna be looking at same similar situation with Basalt as we are with Basalt Street, having a deficit
With
with
Old
our
Viking?
bond payments
And Binnaker.
if we move forward
I
with the
just-
project?
yeah.
And there's gonna be some Green Acres deferreds.
I'm not sure, I understand your question,
So on Old Viking, so on Basalt, we have a deficit
but,
because there's Green Acres, so it's been deferred, we haven't gotten that money back in until they sell.
there
So
are
there's-
other things that caused this deficit though. It was the way that the prepayments occurred. In the front, they were all prepaid,
Yeah.
so we made no interest coming in.
So is that,
That's part of
the
it.
O'Malley's paying prepaid? Did they
Well,
prepay?
that was part of it, yes.
So the question's gonna come up, like on Old Viking or Pinnaker. Pinnaker probably doesn't have Green Acres, but Old Viking will have some Green Acres property that will defer the assessment. And there could be prepayment. That's one of the things we've been cautioned, that some people just wanna, rather than put it on their taxes and be assessed for 10 years, they just wanna pay it. So that's gonna change our calculations. So to Corey's point,
Sure.
do we risk on a bigger project, because Basalt was limited number of homes, but here we're talking about 66 properties. Do we risk going deficit on that? Do we risk a deficit there because of Green Acres and or prepayment?
If everything is calculated right, I would think that you've got to calculate it so that it's a perfect match. And the fact that you, let's say your bonds were 2%, your assessments are 4%. Like you said, if you kept the assessments, you'd make a profit in that fund over time. But if they're all prepaid, it should still break even. You should never come into a loss position if you do it right and assess exactly the amount of the bond issue. It shouldn't. I don't recall a fund that was bad other than Basalt, and Basalt was odd. It had a lot of different things. We probably could have, I think I was telling Mary, is put that $10,000 there in the beginning. That, because the city really had an assessed parcel there. It's not that we're transferring this over because we're short of funds. You had an assessed parcel, right? And we should have paid it, our assessed parcel up in front, and that's my fault. We should have just transferred that in the beginning. And then it would be even closer.
Which was our parcel?
Yeah, it was our parcel.
It's just not that far off to be worried about it. And but if you had a big project, $200,000, make sure you have me look at it and not just have the engineers look at it from a financial standpoint. Yeah, I've seen, over in Forest Lake, I've seen funds end up in a big hole.
Well,
But
this
it-
project is 533,000.
But, Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Rainbow.
I do have a couple questions, and one of them was going to be what Corey asked, given the issue with the dollars and on the Basalt, improvement, what can we, if we can do anything to eliminate any deficit going forward? I don't know if we can ask people if they're looking to prepay, and so then not assuming that interest, that we're gonna accrue that interest. I don't know if that's too much of a guessing game.
No, you gotta be very, very, very careful with those, because, for one thing, I've seen situations where they didn't budget for the attorney, or not for the engineering, so if you get up in front and you don't bond for every dollar that
Okay.
you spend, that can be a problem. But you can't avoid free payments,
Okay, all right.
but I don't think those prepayments are gonna
Okay.
cause a
You
problem.
can't avoid it, but I think what Councilman Rainville's asking is, can we ask people if they're planning on prepaying and adjust
Accordingly.
our expected interest accordingly?
Can we do what?
Can we ask the property owners if they're likely to prepay? So we don't anticipate their interest when there isn't gonna be any, their interest monies.
I know, you got how many different partials, you're talking 66? I suppose you could send out a flyer asking them whether they're gonna prepay it or not. But like I said, I don't think the prepayment aspect,
What is that?
unless
Impact?
you got a big chunk of money sitting in there and you can't prepay the bonds. So you make sure that the bonds are callable. You don't get caught in that trap, okay? So if Oilers is gonna issue the bonds or whatever, make sure that those can be prepaid if you get a big ton of money in your special assessment fund. Because, yeah, that could really hurt you, right? If somebody paid a couple $100,000 up front and we're not getting any interest at the bank, but we're having to pay 2% interest on the bond, that could hurt us in a hurry, couldn't it?
It could.
Yeah, so make sure that the bonds can be retired early.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman
I
Rainville.
think one of the risks of that, it's like, they can tell you they're going to, and then at the last minute they don't. So then are we re-looking and reconfiguring dollars? I don't know.
Well,
I'm just, if
So
there's
the
an
worst case, if
easy,
they said they would,
yeah,
and they don't, then you got the interest. and
Right.
You weren't planning on it.
yes,
I mean, I'd rather have them say they were and not do it, than say they're not going to and do it.
and do it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like people say, I'm gonna retire, so you bank that salary and then they don't retire. You have to pay the salary, so.
I'm worried about, is there a lot of green acres in what you're doing? I hate those things.
There's
Yeah,
some big
what's the
chunks there.
percentage
There's
of
gonna
it?
be some, I suppose.
Yeah.
But we'll watch it very, very closely, but I think that the key is there, and it used to be an unthinkable thing, but not so much nowadays, that you can prepay those bonds. You've gotta be able to have what's the term for that? The ability to retire those things early.
Mr. Mayor, I do have 3 additional questions.
You're not off the hook yet, Mike. More questions.
On page 3 and page 12, there is a liability, accrued compensation absences.
Yeah.
Okay, and my question is, on page 12, it talks vacation and sick leave.
Yeah.
So, does that include the EMB that we offer to the employees and comp time that's on the books? Or is it just
No.
vacation
It's
sick?
just sick leave accumulated hours and, all right.
Okay, so
The-
where would that be?
I thought the EMD was eliminated.
No,
Who would that apply to?
any employee that has
Couple of
accrued it,
employees that-
for all full-time
You
employees.
used to put it in here in your notes. You used to use the
So I
EMD
just-
because the vacation is a liability. The EMD was an exposure.
Exposure, that was,
Yeah, I put that footnote in there, but I was told that it didn't exist anymore.
no, it
No,
doesn't.
it still exists.
All right.
Who were you listening to?
It was right here in note A, along with the rest of the contingencies.
What page?
So, you know,
11?
we can change that and add that in.
Sounds like 10.
Assume it's in the range of 64, 70,000. We'd have to, and then put that,
So where are you putting it, Mike?
note A, contingencies,
What-
contingent liability.
What
What
page are we on?
page?
Hmm?
What page?
Oh, I'm sorry,
Sorry.
23,
23?
the very last.
I just remember that being a large dollar amount.
Yeah, it
And
was-
so
I remember
I need that,
$64,000,
that's
yeah.
gotta be page
Which isn't
20.
an enormous amount of money when
Okay.
when you take a look at the $500,000 you got coming from HRA. But it should be disclosed just for, and we can
Okay.
certainly change that page to add a paragraph back in there.
Okay. And then my next question is on page 13,
Page 13,
number 2. You've got public hearings are conducted to obtain taxpayer comments. We don't, in December, we have one, so it's not, and that's actually, it's to, we receive comment, but we've already 99.9% determined what the budget is. So I think that's somewhat misleading.
let's see here, what that exactly says. Yeah, there's that, come out of the state auditor's boilerplate here. You're looking at, those numbered items there, clerk submits, public hearings. Which one are you?
Number 2.
Number 2.
Two?
Yes. We don't hold public hearings. We hold a hearing in
Truth
this,
of taxation.
but that's in December, and we're at that point, we're 99.9% sure of what our budget is. So to me, it's misleading to say we're holding public hearings. We're holding open budget meetings to obtain comments. But as of the December meeting, we're, like I say, 99.9% sure of what our budget is. So it's, to me, it's misleading. I mean, maybe it doesn't bother anybody else, but to me, that's
Well, yeah.
misleading.
If it's not true, because
Yeah.
public hearings
They're
are
not-
just like what you had tonight.
Right, it's not a regular council meeting, but we have budget meetings, and then we have budget discussions.
What
at
you're
council.
saying is you prefer the clarification here is there's a truth and taxation comment period before the final budget
Is adopted.
is adopted in
But-
December.
Right, but people should still, anybody that's gonna read this should be able to understand, though, that they are still able to provide us comment at any time. But, however,
So.
So the council accepts comments on the budgets, but right now we don't currently have scheduled any public hearings.
correct.
So the one clarification would be there's a truth and taxation hearing regarding the budget in December of each year. And
So maybe instead of, well, that's what those are. Public hearings, truth and taxation. Maybe that's what it should say, truth and taxation hearings are
Hearing.
conducted.
Yeah. But again,
actually, it's just one hearing.
it's one hearing, and again, we are getting taxpayer comments, but at that point, any chance of truly making any big change in the budget is highly unlikely.
It's been submitted to the county already,
That's
so we
by
can
the
lower it, but we
15th.
can't raise it. If
Yeah.
somebody came in and said,
Yeah,
So we'll change that just to truth and taxation meetings are conducted,
in December of the year.
period.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, and then on page 14, and this is a question more to Corey, but it clicked in when I read this. Under the deficit fund balances, the last sentence, the proceeds from one remaining lot will eliminate the deficit. Where are we on the closing on that lot?
It looks like it might be into June,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, thank you.
I thought you got a deposit from it last year.
No, we have one
That's a
property
different,
did,
that was
but we
still
gave it
up. Yeah,
we did, but then they left.
Oh, yeah. Right.
We have another sale pending. And that last all covered, all of our balances are covered by FDIC or collateral pledge. That's still true.
yeah.
Now, they do a good job over at Pine River Bank of reporting. They actually give you a report every month, don't they?
Pledges.
Yeah. Showing the amount of collateral plus the insurance. That's one thing you never want to have go astray.
That's the end of my questions.
So Mike, you were saying that this report was something the state,
Is what?
is this what the state asked for this, or?
Part of the gas utility board requirement, yeah.
It's required because of page 1 here in your report. Best way to explain that. You've got to put page 1. It's a real number 1. The business balance sheet, which is part of GASB government accounting's standards. Okay, if you take a look at that, got all the assets there. How would you get those if you didn't have this? So that is how I twist that word around to say that the state auditor requires it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's good to have.
Yeah. So, I even had Joe help me keep it straight, the road and bridge equipment. So should I collect these and add that liability for the extended medical?
You could do that and the truth and taxation.
And then you get the exact wording, that truth and taxation hearings are held, period. Or did you want to expand on that?
I think you could work with Corey on verbiage.
Truth and taxation hearings are conducted to obtain taxpayer comments? Or just truth and taxation hearings are conducted, period?
Well, the truth and taxation is one hearing.
It's one hearing in
Yeah.
December.
Oh,
Yeah.
keep it singular.
Yep.
But I want, again, whether anybody looks at this or not, I want people to understand, though, they do have the ability to provide input to us,
Public is welcome to
During-
comment during the budget,
budget meetings and,
budget hearings prior to September 15th.
So maybe we're supposed to be. Public hearings.
I don't know that's required, but certainly in public, we always have them in open session, so. All of our budget hearings are held in this room and are open to the public. But we don't typically have public hearings because we're not, previously, we have not asked for public comments on the budget items. But there is a truth in taxation that is required by statute.
Yeah, I feel a little nervous about kicking that out. If we're supposed to be holding those things, or substituting it somehow, you can try substituting for somehow.
And why don't you check it out and see what's required?
Yeah, I think this is statutory. So I'll do a little research on that. But if you don't hold public hearings, to get taxpayers' comments, you don't, then we'll have to take it out of there.
I'll work with you on it,
Okay.
Vicki. I know what you're looking
Come up
for.
with
Yeah.
something there. The other comment, I want to calculate the an estimated ESD liability and put it in that footnote.
In addition to that is,
Exposure,
It-
not liability.
yeah, is also our
Right.
comp time that's on the books. Because at some point we'll have to pay that out, so we need to know what it is.
Comp time's a liability,
Exposure.
but the EMV is an exposure.
Okay, you want to use the word exposure. That's all right with me?
Well, that's what you had told us, was that it's an
Yeah,
exposure.
You taught us that, Mike.
I guess, I thought that you had told me that that was gone.
No, I never said that.
Why would I take it out?
That's a lot
Your
of,
audit, not
yeah.
mine.
And if it's, I mean,
Well,
It's a lot
we'll
of
get it
money.
solved. We'll get it solved. Corey's got, yeah, we could, if we're gonna change a couple of things, then, we'll do that, and we'll run a new DVD that we send
Yeah,
in.
we're
See, the
gonna have to,
DVD
yeah.
is emailed, whatever, to the safes, and we should make any changes to that before we send that in.
Yeah.
So throw away the one you got, huh?
Once she gets a new one.
No big deal, they're only $10. So,
Thank you, sir.
we're looking for a project to do this year.
Well,
You'll come up with
our
one?
road improvement plans, making sure that we get those financially
I'll
right.
take that one under my wing.
What kind of stuff have you done for other cities?
But the bonding, I wanna make sure I look at the bonding, if you're gonna use Eilers, I wanna look at that, early. To see what they're doing.
All right,
Yeah. It's a nice color. Okay. Not. I knew that one. Where'd you get that? Oh, yeah. So I've got most of it there, Cody.
Yeah.
let me just look at the one.
all right.
Talking about Randy's and Paul, right?
Yes.
You can collect those.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. See you later.
Ms. Stockman, code enforcement updates.
Code enforcement updates. Well, if we could ever get rid of the snow, we could make a little better progress, but
I'm thinking by June.
yeah, I'm thinking June might be it.
Ice out last year was like early March, first week of March.
I know, last April
I
1st,
think
I
it was
remember.
30 inches on most lakes still.
I remember last April 1st, yeah, I was outside working in the yard.
We had 5 degrees this morning.
Yeah.
Talking about possibly 0 on Friday night.
Crazy. So, not a ton happening. I have noticed the deterioration on Long Nowden Boulevard there at our Anderson household and stopped a couple times.
There's a dog out there today when I came by.
You saw her?
A dog.
Oh,
Somebody's there to let the dog out.
yeah, I mean, there's enough cars there for, you know, a couple families, but nobody answered, at least on the days I stopped, so I'm gonna have to proceed with letters or citations. I can't believe they haven't gotten a dumpster in there to clean up the structure, from the structure fire. And she had made mention of the, back in January that, she was still waiting for approval from the insurance company, so not sure what that holdup is. The latest with Mr. Madsen on Norris Lake Road, he's thinking that he's going to split his property and possibly sell his business, I guess. I noticed he did call me, did not leave a message, but I haven't spoken with him directly yet. He does have to resolve the CUP issues. I sent him an email stating that his business was currently not legal, and that I just wanted him to make buyers aware that they would have to come through the city to continue operating there. And then he also got that letter from regarding the wetland violation. Mr. Dubnik's attorney is kind of dragging his feet a little bit. I haven't gotten anything in writing, but I know he was also kind of waiting till the weather got nice to go out there and look at the issue. But Bob Rupi commented that they really don't have a very good argument, so we'll see what comes of that. Anyway, no new complaints this month.
Did you ever check and see on Burns Auto how many cars we allotted and how many they actually have? We got a lot of cars there.
Yeah, they're packing them in. I did notice that they're parking in places they're not supposed to be. Yeah. Yep. For sure.
That and the lighting. Last time I went by, it seemed to be much better. I don't know if they turned some off or redirected them or did something, but it used to be quite a glow coming west on 22.
Okay. Okay.
But
Well,
yeah, I drove by the other day and there's a lot of vehicles there.
I could stop and chat, or if you'd want me to
Do we even know who's running it these days?
send a letter. Well, I think it's still the same guy, to my knowledge, that was running it when they came through for the permit.
He passed.
No,
No, and
Didn't he?
the mister,
he did, Mr. Swanson did.
Yeah,
but he wasn't running
He
it.
well,
wasn't
that's
running
true,
it.
that's true, the other guy was.
Question
Yeah.
is,
Yeah,
so was it a CUP
It,
or IUP?
I believe that one was a CUP.
So we're checking, because how does it affect with the property owners passing?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, if they're still residing there, she's still residing there and running it, that wouldn't be a problem if it's a family member. But
That's what we're checking, because
if she were to sell or something, then it may be an
it's
issue.
interesting to see who owns the property these days.
Okay. Okay. Well, what is your thought then? You want me to just stop by, send a letter?
Well, we have conditions and make sure that, at a minimum, they're meeting conditions. The property's still in the same ownership, same family ownership, the lighting and the number of cars, the conditions we had about parking in parking spaces only and not using 199th as a test drive.
Mm-hmm.
The one that's just north of that ever finished up their conditions either. It looks like they got stopped halfway through.
No, that one is an absolute mess. I don't think they even still have a certificate of occupancy to be using the building. I mean, that's how.
You know, it's one of those things that we've expressed in other hearings recently, that our main drags, we want to make sure that we can be as attractive as possible within legal
Right.
limitations.
Right.
So, yeah, I would focus on those highly visible 47s. A lot of people evaluate now than by driving by those places on 47 and on 22. So.
66, 5, 24.
All right,
Okay.
anything else for us?
Not on code enforcement. There were a couple things under the consent agenda that were prepared by me. One was a resolution for the Elfelt property regarding the sale of firearms. And that was basically just clarifying, for the state's purposes, he has applied for his FFL. And they didn't like the way the findings were worded, so that was a kind of a technicality. I did express that you had known about it and, you know, we had talked about it, so. And then, the only other thing was the ordinance 21803 regarding disturbances at city meetings. And that ordinance was based on Rupi's, draft. I just, edited it to fit into our ordinance format. And I did talk to him about whether he wanted it for sure in the ordinance, given that all the other council, items were made policies and not kept in the ordinance, but he said that this should still be in the ordinance to give the city more teeth if they ever had to fight it. And then, it just refers to the policies for, rules of conduct.
I wouldn't type on the rules of conduct because this was cut from another city. We give 3 minutes at the open mic, this city gave 5. Item number 1, last sentence. On the rules, on page 1.
Oh, I didn't see the. Do I even have that? I don't know if I got that.
Yeah, do you have something stapled to that?
Oh,
Right
I'm
there.
sorry, yeah, it's right there.
And the header,
Oh, right in the header.
the header as well. It's,
An oak is spelled wrong.
I just saw that.
Oh, funny. Okay,
Number 1, the very last whole line, it talks about the persons addressing the body shall be limited to 5 minutes.
3. Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
All right. And then the last thing would be the rescheduled comp plan workshop, but without Randy and Paul here, it's really probably not gonna happen tonight, so.
Okay.
You give us again any dates you're not available, if you get that to Corey, so we can have that for Tuesday.
Sure, we'll do that.
All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Rainville.
item 1.4, I just want to be clear that it's, I think it was $3,000, that not be expended without prior approval of the council, so we can determine what we would like to focus that on.
All right. Anything else on the consent agenda? Councilmember Bryan.
So depending on, I don't know if Mike's gonna have those audits reports back on Tuesday. So. I'm assuming then, if we don't have them back by then, that 1/7 is gonna have to come off.
We can pull it on Tuesday.
Or we can approve with the
Amendment.
amendments as agreed upon.
Question about 1A in the watershed, is our percentage just so high, because do they base that on how much water you have in your city?
How much land, actually?
Land?
Should we readjust that then if the
Well, you
annexation goes
look at
through?
where the watershed money's going. They had a big meeting today and all the watersheds got together and they're looking at how they can spend money and that's one we gotta keep a close eye on because,
I know they like to spend money.
yeah, I called Dan Deno, and asked if he was going to it today because I couldn't make it. Randy wasn't able to make it. And, so that's nothing you can do there anyway. I said, well, they're deciding how they're gonna spend the money, which watershed gets it and which lakes get it. So they're deciding spending dollars, so something we need to be paying attention to. But yeah, we get the lion's share because of the portion, if you take a look at the East Bethel and Ham Lake, I believe, or Ham Lake, I think, I don't have the map here, but Ham Lake goes over into another watershed.
Oh,
That's why they're so low. But yeah, you look at East Bethel, they got the same. All right, anything else there? I technically on RCA for the mayor's, oh, here it is. Mayor's conference. I thought there was a map of the different watersheds in here, but I don't see it. All right, council items A, I think we need to wait till Paul gets in. He sent me a note today. We can update that on Tuesday when Paul's back. E, Corey had asked me earlier in the week, Dan, about getting clarification on what exactly you are looking at, and I think the consistency between our policies and this document need to be addressed. So I would propose that we should table this until that's been worked out with Corey, rather than try and hammer it out here without, making sure the two documents are consistent, if that's okay with you.
yeah, I just, knowing that we have something in our current policy, how that translates to the resolution and or
We
one
just,
or the other need to be adjusted.
we just need to work with Corey on that. Get them consistent and bring it back. And I think that's one of the things that Corey and I talked about. If there's things that need that, we should approach Corey and find out where it fits her schedule to make sure she or Joe have a chance to weigh in on them. So when they come here, their questions are answered and they know clear direction. Yeah, this policy and that policy now state the same thing. It'll be easy to vote on. So whenever we can, let's make sure we're going through the office first. RCA for hiring seasonal employees. Anybody have a question on that?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Rainbow.
I have a question. In the first paragraph of this last sentence, it said, last year we hired a truck driver as well to assist with hauling gravel and other duties as needed. I went back, listened to the meeting, and that isn't what we approved. We approved a person that was just going to do hauling. And that was, 3 times was asked, what is this person gonna do? How long are they gonna do it? And we were told 3 times that it's just going to be grading or hauling and nothing else. And that if it wasn't nice out, then he's at home. When I did an audit of the time cards for that party, there were 509 total hours, and 173 of them were non-gravel related. So about, I don't know, 35% of his hours were not associated with graveling. So as far as other duties as needed, we didn't agree to that last year. And if we're gonna agree to that this year, what are these other duties? Are we going to assign them, that party, other responsibilities so that our existing full-time employees can work on the items mentioned in our building officials' building report, the maintenance items that are needed there? And one item that wasn't in that report is the ramp out here. That's, I think, our 5th year on that ramp, and it's not been sealed. That needs to be sealed. So I'd like to get some assurances that if we bring somebody in, they're just gonna do the hauling. If they're gonna do additional work, then what is that work? What assurances do we have that the maintenance that needs to be done on our buildings are going to be done? I don't know, just,
So let me back up a little bit. One, Corey, do you know if Joe's talked to Jerry at all? Is Jerry still around? Is Jerry still interested?
I believe Jerry has already got a different job.
Is he? So we'd be looking for somebody new.
I think so.
Okay. So then to Mary's point of saying, if 30% of the duties are in addition to hauling, how would you recommend we ask that question to have the best, most positive response?
I guess I'm unclear of your question.
Question, well, what I'm trying to do is be as collaborative as we can. So the question to Joe will be, right now, he's asking for somebody to do hauling and other duties as necessary. Last year, he did 30% of something beyond hauling. So Jerry was helpful in other ways. How do we capture what that is? Is that something you can draw from Joe to say, what are those additional responsibilities?
I think, Zuriel, that what he's asking for, what he was saying is last year we hired the truck driver that did truck hauling and did some other things, but this year he's only asking for the truck driver.
and Mr. Mayor, again, he does, in the request for council action, is to not to exceed 40 hours a week and only when needed for hauling gravel. My reservation is that last year we were told the person that was hired was only going to be hauling. And we said, okay, we'll agree to that. But there were numerous hours that were spent on non-hauling related functions. And so what's our assurance that that won't happen again? And I don't want to assume that it will, but I need some assurances, because we were told once that they'd be doing one thing and they did numerous things.
Yeah, misunderstood. And Corey, what you're saying is he wants to hire a truck driver and they're just gonna haul.
That's what I understand, yes.
Okay.
And that was why it said, and only needed for hauling gravel.
Okay,
Because of
So
the
then-
concerns from last year.
so then
that-
I would say if Joe finds that Steve or Eric aren't available and this person who's hauling gravel could be useful in some other way, he would request permission to use them before they do anything but haul gravel.
Yeah.
So we can stick with that, Joe, they're being hired to haul gravel. Anything else that might be useful for vacations or sicknesses or whatever has to be pre-approved.
I would say that would be a good compromise. I mean, if there was 173 non-hauling hours of work to do, and there's actually work for other people to do, then, you know, that's one thing. I know since last year, Andy put together the building report, and there was other things needed to be done at the parks as far as painting and whatnot, if there's other work to do. But if Joe is just asking for the truck driver, then anything above and beyond that, we just need to work with Joe to figure out how that all plays in with everything else. And maybe some of that is covered by Steve having been able to, you know, work more part-time, but I just don't know.
Well, I think at the part-time position, doing the parks and the recycling might free Steve up a little too, so. If that's what Joe wants, just as long as it's clear that if he's gonna ask this person to do anything besides hauling, just get pre-approval for it.
Then, Mr. Mayor, what I would also recommend then is, in light of all this, because of all the additional work that is being proposed, if there is a need for it, that maybe they assign 2 council members to get the pre-authorization. Then that way, we're not waiting for a whole month.
I agree.
Should we need to get over there and do some painting, or, you know, maybe it's a super dry spell, and that would be a perfect time to do some staining or something.
I agree.
Or I was thinking, yeah, or the opposite, if it's a rainy day and you have to change your plan and you can't haul gravel, then you know, sometimes they did things in the shop or whatever.
Well, I'm generally available, Joe gets a hold of me on a regular basis. You're gonna be retired. And Randy will be retired, so if you wanna propose 2 people, I'd like to be one of them, so. I think it's a good idea so that he can be responsive to conditions. Annexation, anything else on that? Annexation update? Since, go ahead.
I think it's just going to be just the rate, is it matter or it's just 15, whatever he does?
Yes. I'm assuming if they're qualified to drive the truck, that they should be. Joe will be looking for people to be qualified to do other things as well.
Yeah, okay, I'm just
And it would be a
nightmare.
trying to figure out what rate they're getting paid at, because
That's why we're going next in that, we probably don't want to do that, but okay. Works for me.
just on the annexation update, apparently we made the paper.
Just texting.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
I got an alert on it, and I don't pay for a subscription to the newspaper, so I asked Corey if she would print it for us.
It just came out today, didn't it?
I don't know if the paper itself came out, because I think
Paper's
that comes.
tomorrow.
The paper hits tomorrow, but you get the alert, but I might as well just cancel the alert, because I don't pay for it, so I can't look at anything anyway. All I see is the headline and 2 sentences.
I discovered that too.
Yeah.
It's only 791 acres has been transferred between 2 incorporated municipalities since 1959. Wow, we're almost,
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bryan.
what are the next, I mean, is there a schedule or a timeframe, or what are the next steps for all that? as it's
Well,
going on?
You know, at the meeting, I had suggested that maybe Oak Grove Council wanted to talk to their attorney before passing a resolution. Their attorney talked to our attorney and got clarification of what I was trying to express at the meeting. And apparently my understanding has a different understanding of what he might have advised the council on. And Mr. Raisler did call me last Friday morning, and his comment was that Oak Grove was considering hiring a big downtown law firm to represent them in this proceeding. But there is now an understanding that if they proceed with a recommendation of support, they become a party. Their attorney thought that they would become witnesses, and that they would be called to offer expert testimony and would probably be compensated for it. The understanding that Mr. Rupi has is no, they would be party to it, and they would be subject to deposition, and their staff could be called to be deposed, their records, their finances, maps would all be part of the proceedings, and there would be cost to that. And I don't believe Mr. Racer was planning on picking up any cost. His conversation with me was, he was planning on spending $20,000 on his own cost and not really looking to pick up anybody else's. In addition, we did get an email or a letter from Mr. Farb. We're still trying to clarify exactly what he's asking,
That's what I was trying to, yeah.
because it's not clear if he just doesn't want to come before the council, or he doesn't want us to act on his request, but I don't know what that means as far as Oak Grove. I don't know if he's still part of the proceedings and just doesn't want anything to do with us. So we're trying to get clarification what he's actually asking. Is he still party to this, but just doesn't want to talk to us? Or is he dropping out? I'm not quite sure what he is. The clarification on the Moritz property is not clear, because technically they're not abutting Oak Grove. And until the annexation happens, they're not abutting Oak Grove, therefore they shouldn't qualify. But that's up to the administrative law judge. So there is still an opportunity for Oak Grove to change their mind. They could withdraw their support, in which case, according to current statute, they couldn't proceed. You guys are all at the meeting, you know that's highly unlikely. So at this point, we'll wait and hear if the Mr. Raisler and associates proceed with the state, then we'll get notified. And at this point, the council here is still resolved to challenge it. So there will be likely legal fees on the part of Oak Grove, part of Now Then, and a part of the parties. But at this point, we're waiting to hear, and we'll see what fallout there is from this story. So. But at this point, we don't have any further obligation. We can keep encouraging landowners to discuss what they're really looking for. But it's up to Oak Grove, and it's up to the landowners and the state at this point.
There
The
has-
decision we'll have to make is whether we want to have somebody else represent us. Does he want to be party to this, or recommend another firm? This it should be decided on the 14 points that Bob sent out. The law judge should do that, but they have a lot of discretion in how they interpret that. It's not going to be clear where one has sewer and water, the other one doesn't. And obviously, according to this article, since 1959, so we're talking 70 years, 60 years, only 791 acres has ever been transferred this way before. So it's not as common as they made it sound at the Oak Grove meeting. I don't know if they mentioned his 1 to 10 year plan or not. About Moritz Road.
They did mention 1 acre lots in there.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember
I
Rainville.
think they just mentioned future development plans, but he changed that during that meeting from 10 years to 1 to 10. So hard to know what he told the reporter.
Right, so at this point, we're waiting to hear probably from the state, and then we'd have to decide how we want to pursue.
Mr. Mayor?
Mayor Stockman,
I don't believe they've submitted an actual petition yet, have they?
for the Oak Grove?
Right, I mean.
Yes, Mr. Racer provided them with a petition.
Oh, he did have that filled out already, okay,
Yeah, he gave it to the administrator,
okay,
Lauren.
all right.
And so their attorney was going to modify it, and apparently just got passed through as Mr. Racer submitted it.
I see, okay.
But that was the question was, they didn't have to vote, I suggested that the easy way to find out if what I'm saying is right is ask your attorney. And they said, we've already talked to the attorney, and he said he didn't think there'd be a problem. But after an extended conversation with Bob Rupi, he may have changed his mind. I have not heard that from anybody in Oak Grove. It hasn't been discussed in my place of business since then, so. I think they figured it was all put to bed that night, so.
Okay.
All right? And assessment options and considerations, I don't know if we have anything here tonight, or we certainly can consider that with the full council, but question that came up on deferring ag land or excluding ag land until it's developed, if it's developed within 5 years is one option. We have a couple of parcels there that Corey's gonna check with Shane on that aren't on our map here that are on the map there, so. And then if there's any consideration for businesses that are on there. If anybody has any,
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Raymond.
I don't know how you would do that. I mean, how do you judge without having a period of time where you've sat outside of a parcel and counted traffic in and out of there, the types of cars, and then if you're there, let's use April, if you're there in April and you're tracking what goes in and out in April, and it's not busy, but, June's really busy, but you're not there tracking then, how would you ever
What you
fairly
could
do
probably
that?
do is a random sample of normal traffic, what's considered normal. And then, in the case of the threshing show where they have specific events, scheduled the spring and summer and fall events, you'd have to do a study there. And if that were the case, we'd have to put it off for at
We'd
least
have
a
to,
year.
yeah, Mr. Mayor, yeah, that
'Cause
would
you could have a
delay
one-year
it.
study saying, if you got normal threshing show traffic, or spring tractor pull, or wapiti, or fall tractor pull, if you got a normal day, it wasn't raining, you could say, threshing show weekend, we have X thousands of cars in addition to normal traffic.
And then the question is, if you have 10,000 cars coming in for 4 days, so you'd have to do the number of days they have cars in and out, and then you have to look at all of the days that there isn't anybody in and out. So if you have, let's say 100,000 cars, just a number, is that 100,000 cars over 12, 15, 20 days any different than spreading it out over 365? Again, I don't know how you would fairly assess that.
I don't know how you could fairly assess it,
Yeah.
but I can understand some homeowners saying, gee, there's a lot more traffic on days something's happening on the threshing show grounds.
And I
And-
understand
and
that.
Trucks are bringing in trailers loaded with tractors, so they might be heavier.
Yeah.
Again, if the road's built right, is that a problem?
It shouldn't be.
No. Yeah, because you've got trucks going all over the city.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I think one of the other concerns was, is that even an option under the 429? To do the assessment, can you assess businesses, a specific property, because they're running events, a greater assessment value versus, either by foot or by parcel? And I thought that was part of the discussion that we came up, that if I remember right, I could totally be wrong, I'd have to go back and look at the notes, but I think that was part of it, is like, you can't. Because there was.
It's worth checking the notes, because it'll come up, but I think the way we're doing it right now is the best of all worlds. I mean, it's,
Mr. Mayor,
Planner Stockman.
I would surmise there's some residences with quite a few kids that would have more cars per day averaged out through the year than the threshing show even. You know, if you have 15, 16 trips a day, because, you know, each in and out is a trip. Just guessing.
Well,
but-
and what qualifies as a business, you know, we've got a
Right.
number of farmers there with, you know, you go out and get a load of hay. You got a flatbed full of hay,
Right.
or you've got Tommy's going there with all the stuff coming in and out of there.
Home businesses with a semi or box trucks.
Yeah, so at this point, I think that the key is get the road in the best shape we can and maintain its rating so that, and if somebody's overweight on it, then making sure that's addressed. But
I think it's fair. I mean, I think the threshing show has 4 or 5 parcels, 4 for sure. So, I mean, that seems pretty fair. I mean, I don't know. But, one thing I did notice too is, yeah, if you could make a note, Corey, you know, the address 6635 Old Viking, I think has a residence.
yeah, that's the one we.
Is that the one you talked about? And
If you
then,
look right next to it, there seems to be a flag lot going to the acreage behind it. You can't see it on that map, but if you look on our big map over there, there's appears to be a flag lot between that one and the one to the west.
oh, that's possible. But the other thing I noticed was about the Buddhist temple. Because we've exempted the cemetery, but not the temple.
Right.
That's what
because
Bob
that's a
said.
private property.
Was that what he recommended?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay,
Yeah, because they're treating it as a private property.
okay, gotcha.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman O'Brien.
one thing that just popped in my head, and I don't remember, Liz, you might know. When the threshing show redid their CUP, IUP, wasn't part of that to consolidate parcels?
I don't think we required them to do it. They may have been, we may have talked about it. I'll have to look at that.
And I don't know, and then the follow-up question is, has that been done, and is there a,
I know it hasn't
on.
been done, no.
okay.
I know it hasn't been done. I'm not sure if that was made a requirement or not.
I was trying to remember where it was to look, but,
Yeah, that's a good point.
and if it does need to be done, is there some cutoff that comes into play?
I'll check
They're
that.
smart, they'd go fast. Mr. Mayor, if there's nothing else, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.